Have you ever been alive, breathing, sitting right there, and yet suddenly made to feel like you don't exist? Like you've become invisible in your own child's life. That kind of pain, nobody prepares you for it. I am a mother. I raised my son with these hands. I cooked his meals. I stayed awake through his fevers. I let go of my own dreams so his could grow. And I truly believe that love like that finds its way back. But sometimes it doesn't return as love. Sometimes it comes back as silence. Sometimes as disrespect. And sometimes it comes back as a single sentence. So sharp, so careless, you carry it inside you for the rest of your life. That day began like any other visit. I dressed carefully. I fixed my hair. I chose a sweater that made me feel decent. Because when you grow old, you start trying harder, just to not feel like a burden. Isn't that heartbreaking? Trying not to take up space. In the life you once gave everything to, I walked into my son's home carrying years of memories and quiet hope. I believed I was still welcome, still family. But something felt wrong. The air was stiff. The politeness was cold. Smiles appeared but never reached the eyes. And in moments like that, your heart knows before your mind does. I told myself I was overthinking. We do that as parents. We excuse behavior, so we don't have to face the truth. So I kept smiling. I stayed quiet. I made myself smaller, because I didn't want to cause a scene. Isn't it strange how we're taught to remain polite, even when we're being hurt? But deep inside I could feel it building. That moment when everything changes. I didn't know what my son was going to say, but I felt it in my chest like a warning bell. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from realization. Because respect doesn't always grow with age. Sometimes it disappears. And this isn't just my story. It's the story of every parent who wonders. When love became conditional. Every mother who quietly asks herself, when did I stop mattering? Stay with me. Because what my son said next wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was cruel enough to silence me completely. Growing old doesn't hurt the way people think it does. It's not the wrinkles. It's not the slower steps or the tired bones. The real pain begins when you start questioning your place in the world. When you quietly wonder if you're still needed, still wanted, or just being tolerated. No one tells you that one day you'll walk into your own child's home and feel like you need permission just to exist. At first it showed up in small ways. Conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Plans made around me, never with me. Polite smiles that felt more like obligation than affection. And I told myself what parents always tell themselves. This is normal. Children grow up. Life gets busy. Isn't that what we say? So we don't have to admit how lonely it feels? I didn't want to be that mother. The one who complains. The one who is called difficult or needy. So I stayed quiet. I made myself smaller. I learned how to disappear without ever leaving the room. And that's when something inside me began to break. I started worrying about things I had never worried about before. Was I talking too much? Sitting too long? Eating too slowly? Imagine that. A mother afraid of taking up space. At her own son's table. I caught myself apologizing for nothing. Sorry if I'm in the way. Sorry if I'm late. Sorry if I'm too much. And with every apology, a piece of my dignity quietly slipped away. Because when you apologize for existing, you teach the world that it's acceptable to forget your worth. I looked around and saw how people my age are treated, like background noise. Useful when needed, invisible when not. And that fear settled deep in my bones. The fear of becoming a burden. The fear of being unwanted. The fear that one day my presence would feel like an inconvenience, instead of a blessing. I know I'm not alone in this. So many of you listening have felt it too. That quiet insecurity. That silent question you never say out loud. Do I still belong? I walked into that dinner believing I could earn my place with good behavior and silence. But I didn't know then. That respect should never be earned that way. And what happened next would force me to face that truth. In the most painful way imaginable. I walked in carrying hope like fragile glass. Holding it carefully. Afraid that even a small movement might shatter it. Hope that this time would be different. Hope that my son would look at me the way he once did. Not as someone from his past, but as his mother still. Hope can be a dangerous thing when you're the only one holding it. I smiled first like I always do, complimented the house, asked about his life, listened more than I spoke. Isn't it strange how, as we grow older, we start performing politeness just to be allowed to stay? I felt it again, that quiet pressure to behave, to not embarrass him, to not remind him that I existed before his new life did. I told myself to relax. Your family, I whispered inside my head. You belong here. But my heart didn't believe it. He avoided my eyes. His answers were short, distracted, like my presence was interrupting something more important. And in moments like that, you begin to understand. When love becomes rushed, when warmth turns into tolerance, something precious is already slipping away. I sat there with my hands folded, feeling as if I needed permission just to breathe. Every sound felt louder. Every silence felt heavier. My mind drifted back to all the times I welcomed him into my own home, never making him feel like a guest, never making him feel small. And that memory hurt more than I expected because it reminded me how different things used to be. I started blaming myself. Maybe I stayed too long. Maybe I spoke too much. Maybe I wasn't quiet enough, modern enough, useful enough. That's how insecurity works. It convinces you that disrespect is something you must have earned. So I told myself, just get through dinner. Smile. Don't react. 'Cause deep down, I could feel something coming. A moment where words would be spoken that could never be taken back. My body knew it before my mind did. My chest felt tight. My stomach uneasy, like standing on the edge of something you can't see yet, but you know the fall will hurt. I didn't realize it then. But the words my son was about to say would change how I saw him, and how I saw myself, forever. There's a moment right before something breaks, and you can feel it even when no one says a word. Oh, that's the moment I was sitting in. The room was full, voices overlapping, laughter popping in and out, but none of it reached me. Oh, it felt like I was surrounded by sound, yet completely alone. I watched faces turn toward each other, conversations flowing around me, and I realized I had become background noise. In my own son's home. Isn't that a strange kind of loneliness? Being present, but not included. I kept my posture straight, my hands calm, my smile gentle, because that's what we do when we don't want to be a problem. We perform calm, so no one can accuse us of ruining the mood. I noticed how seats were chosen without looking at me, how plates were passed without asking me, how jokes were shared without inviting me in. Little things, right? But little things pile up fast. When you're already feeling invisible, I could feel my heart beating louder than the room, like it was warning me. Pay attention. Because when your own body senses rejection before your mind does, it's rarely wrong. I glanced at my son, waiting for a smile, a gesture, anything that said, "You're welcome. You belong." But his eyes slid past me, like I was furniture. That's when the truth began to sink in. I wasn't being ignored by accident. I was being placed, positioned, managed. He wanted to prove he could control me. He wanted to prove I was replaceable. I felt the room spin for a moment. I could hear laughter around us, but it sounded distant, like it was coming from another life. I felt my dignity slipping away, and it scared me, not because I was ashamed, but because I realized how easily someone can make you feel worthless. The worst part wasn't that he told me to eat in the kitchen. The worst part was that I didn't see it coming. I had believed in my son. I had trusted him. And that trust was the foundation of my life. But now that foundation was cracking. I felt something inside me break. Not into anger, but into awareness. Awareness that my son didn't respect me. Awareness that I had been treated like a burden for a long time, and I had ignored it because I didn't want to be alone. And in that moment I realized the dinner was not just a meal. It was a test, and I had just failed to see it coming. And I didn't say a word. Because sometimes the strongest reaction is silence. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not give them the satisfaction of a scene. I could feel my son watching me, waiting for me to react like a child. waiting for me to cry, beg, or apologize for existing. Oh, but I wasn't going to give him that. I stood up slowly like I was moving through water, and I felt the weight of every year I had spent trying to be the perfect mother. And it hit me then. I had been doing everything for everyone else, and nothing for myself. I had been living my life as a support system, not a person. Oh, and I realized how easy it is to let people take advantage of your kindness when you never set boundaries, because boundaries aren't just for children, they're for adults too, especially when your own family starts treating you like a guest in your own life. I walked toward the kitchen, but I didn't sit down. I didn't accept the place he offered, like I was grateful for the insult. I simply walked away. Oh. And I could feel the room go quiet, like everyone realized something had changed. The silence was heavy, but it wasn't shame. It was power. It was the moment I stopped shrinking myself. Oh. When you stop accepting disrespect, people don't always react with apology. Sometimes they react with anger, because you're no longer feeding their control. I felt my heart pounding, but I kept walking. I didn't rush. I didn't run. I didn't make it dramatic, because I didn't want to give them the story they wanted. I didn't want them to remember me as the mother who cried at the table. I wanted them to remember me as a person who stood up for herself even at the cost of love. And as I walked away, I realized something painful. The problem wasn't just my son. The problem was that I had allowed this to happen for too long. Oh, and that realization was the turning point, because from that moment I decided I would never let anyone make me feel invisible again. I would never let anyone treat me like I didn't belong. And oh, that decision would change my life forever. And when I reached the hallway, I felt something shift inside me, like a door finally opening after being closed for years. I stood there for a moment, breathing slowly, and I realized I was no longer a guest in my own life. I had been treated like one for so long that I forgot what it felt like to be seen. Oh. The first time you stand up for yourself after being ignored for years, it feels like stepping into sunlight after living in a dark room. I didn't want to go back to the table. I didn't want to pretend everything was okay. Because pretending had been my way of surviving, and survival is different from living. I remembered all the times I sacrificed my happiness for others, the times I hid my pain so no one would worry, the times I smiled through loneliness just so my family wouldn't feel guilty. Oh. And I realized something. I didn't owe them my silence. I didn't owe them my dignity. I didn't owe them my life. Because many of us grow up thinking love means giving until you're empty. But real love doesn't take everything from you. Real love makes you feel safe. Real love makes you feel valued. Real love makes you feel like you belong. And I decided I wasn't going to beg for that anymore. I went back into the living room not to argue, but to say something I should have said years ago. I looked at my son and said, "I'm not going to let you treat me like I'm invisible." Oh, and the moment I said it, I felt a strange relief, like a weight lifting off my chest. Oh, because he didn't know how to respond. He had always controlled the conversation by making me feel guilty. But now there was no guilt left. I wasn't going to play the role he expected. When you stop playing the role, people don't know what to do. They get uncomfortable. They get angry. They get quiet. And oh, that's exactly what happened. I watched him struggle for words, like he didn't know how to deal with a mother who finally saw her own worth. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was standing up for every woman who has been told to stay quiet, to stay small, to stay in the background. And oh, from that moment on, I knew I would never go back to being invisible. And you know what happened next? Oh, he froze. Not the kind of freeze that means he's shocked. The kind that means he's caught. Like a liar who finally got caught in his own lie. Oh, because my son was used to controlling every situation with his tone, his words, his attitude. But when I stopped being quiet, he didn't know what to do. He opened his mouth like he was about to say something, then closed it again. And I could feel the tension in the room, like a storm about to hit. I looked at him and saw the real person behind the mask. Not the son I raised, but someone who had learned to hide his feelings behind pride. Oh, when someone's pride is exposed, they react in the worst way. They try to win. They try to silence you. They try to make you feel guilty for being honest. I could see the anger building in his eyes, but he didn't shout. He didn't need to. His silence was enough. It was heavy. It was threatening. Oh, silence can be louder than any scream. I felt the room watching us, waiting for the next move. I could feel the guests shifting in their seats, uncomfortable, like they were watching a private battle they didn't want to be part of. I realized then that I wasn't the only one being judged. They were judging me too, like I was the problem for speaking up. Oh, and that's when it hit me. Sometimes when you stand up for yourself, the world doesn't celebrate you, judges you. It makes you feel like the villain. Oh, but I refused to let that stop me. I held my head high even though my heart was shaking. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. And oh, he tried to pull the control back by saying, "You're embarrassing me." But I didn't respond. I didn't fight. I simply looked at him and said, "I'm not your shame." When you say something like that, it breaks the chain, breaks the power. It makes them realize they can't use you anymore. Oh, and the shock in his eyes was proof. He had never expected me to be strong. He had never expected me to stop begging for love. And in that moment, I knew the battle was not just with him. It was with the years of silence I had accepted. Oh. And the next part of this story is where the real lesson begins. And then I understood something that changed my whole life. I realized the problem wasn't just my son. The problem was the way I had been living for years. Like my worth depended on someone else's approval. Oh, when you depend on someone else to validate you, you give them the power to destroy you. I looked around the room and saw people staring at me like I was causing a scene. But I wasn't causing a scene. I was ending one. I remembered all the times I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. All the times I swallowed my feelings because I didn't want to cause trouble. And oh, I realized that trouble is not the worst thing. The worst thing is staying in a place where you're not respected. I thought about my life, my sacrifices, the years of being a mother, a wife, a caretaker. I thought about how I always put others first. And oh, I felt a mix of sadness and anger. Sadness because I had lost time. Anger because I had allowed myself to be treated like a guest in my own family. But then something inside me softened, because I also realized this was my chance to finally live for me, to finally put myself first without guilt. Oh, sometimes the hardest part of life is not being hurt. It's choosing to heal. I looked at my son again and said, "I raised you, but I don't owe you my life." And when I said it, I felt a peace I hadn't felt in years. Not because I won, but because I finally chose myself. And I want you to hear this. If you're watching and you feel invisible in your own family, you're not alone. It's not your fault. And you don't have to stay quiet forever. Oh, respect is not something you earn by being small. It's something you demand by being strong. And if you ever feel like your love is being used, remember, you deserve dignity. You deserve kindness. You deserve to be treated like a human being, not a burden. Oh, and that's the real lesson of my story. Not the insult. Not the humiliation. But the moment I finally realized my worth. And that realization changed everything. And that's when I knew my life had changed forever. Oh, not because my son shouted or because I walked out. The real change happened inside me. In that quiet moment when I finally decided I mattered. I stood there, breathing slowly, feeling the weight of years lifting from my shoulders. Oh. And I realized something I wish I had learned sooner. You don't need permission to be treated with respect. You don't need to earn love by shrinking yourself. And you don't need to stay in a place that makes you feel invisible. I walked out of that house not as a defeated mother, but as a woman who finally remembered her own value. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my son would ever apologize. I didn't know if our relationship would ever heal. But oh, I knew one thing for sure. I would never let anyone treat me like I was less than human again. Because sometimes the most powerful moment in life is not when you win. It's when you stop accepting losing. I went home and I felt something I hadn't felt in years: peace. Not because my life was perfect, but because I had chosen myself. Oh. And that peace taught me a lesson I want to share with everyone watching. If you're being treated like you don't matter, don't wait for someone to change. Don't wait for an apology that may never come. You deserve dignity right now. Oh. Because if you keep staying silent, people will keep thinking they can treat you however they want. And that's not love. That's control. So here's my final message. You are worth more than the way someone else treats you. If you've ever felt invisible, remember, you don't have to disappear to keep the peace. You can stand up. You can walk away. You can choose yourself. Oh. And if this story touched your heart, if it made you feel seen, then please subscribe to this channel. Stay connected with me for more real grandma stories, real life lessons, and powerful moments that remind you that strength can come at any age. Don't miss the next story, because every life has a lesson, and every lesson deserves to be heard.